What's up and welcome back to Interpreting the Scares! That's right, we're back at it with another film on this daily journey through the nightmares. This time we're taking a look at not the final Hannibal film, but certainly Anthony Hopkins' farewell to the role, and this one is called Red Dragon. Red Dragon once again tells the story that we first saw in Manhunter as Will Graham hunts down the elusive Tooth Fairy serial killer with the help of his old mentor, Hannibal Lecter, who of course has a multitude of tricks up his own sleeve that Will has to decipher at the same time.
We may have a little over 3 weeks before this freak does it again.
I might not have time.
I do. I have oodles.
So, as many people are aware, this story is the most told story in Hannibal history. It's been told 4 times. First in the original Red Dragon book, and that book was adapted in the 1986 film Manhunter, which starred Brian Cox as Hannibal, and then that was remade now with this Red Dragon film. And since the release of this film, we've also seen the story told once again in the 3rd and final season of the Hannibal TV show. You have your pick of the litter with this story, and so it really comes down to preference as to which Hannibal actor that you like the most, because in each of these adaptations, they're all basically told exactly the same way. They aren't retellings or reimaginings. They're the same story, right down to the same lines half the time. I was curious on how this would compare to Manhunter because I didn't exactly love that film. That mostly has to do with the fact that that felt more procedural and it didn't really have the flair of a true conniving Hannibal film. So right out of the gate, I can say that Red Dragon as a whole is a more fitting adaptation of the story because Anthony Hopkins in this role is unquestionably the best part of the movie. So many shots of just Hopkins staring at the camera as he manipulates Will Graham. It's fantastic, and it's a much better representation of Hannibal than what we saw in the previous film, Hannibal. I've always maintained that he's a better character behind bars because you can often see the contrast of how powerful he really is and how much control that he has, even though everybody else is like, no, you're safe because he's behind bars. No, if you think that you're safe, you're dead wrong. You're alive because he sees you as a plaything, nothing more. I love that. Mostly everything else in this film plays out exactly like in Manhunter, other than certain performances which were close but different all at the same time. First and foremost, we have to take a look at Edward Norton, who definitely is solid in his performance as Will Graham, but I'd also argue that he's the worst Will Graham we've ever had, because his portrayal of the character is pretty darn generic. We now know who Will Graham is and what makes him so different as he gets into the mind of a killer. And he sees what they see because, in a way, a small part of him is kind of insane. And it's kind of supposed to be a bit messed up. That's what makes him such a good detective. And Norton doesn't really have that. There's no real good reason either because he's a capable actor that if he wanted to do that, he would. But instead, he stuck with a more generic performance. Now, both William Peterson in Manhunter and Hugh Dancy in the TV show have both shown better performances as Will Graham based on how he's supposed to be utilized. It's not the end of the world since Norton is a good actor in general, but he's not performing the character correctly. Next is Ralph Fiennes, who plays the Tooth Fairy. His portrayal is certainly different than that of Tom Noonan's own in Manhunter, but it's pretty similar to the portrayal seen in the TV show. And given the choice between all 3 different performances, I'd probably say as a whole, Ralph is king. Noonan looks great as Francis Dollarhide, as in general he definitely has that weird appearance and you could believe him as an outcast more, but when it comes down to his transformation from one persona to the next, when he becomes this powerful, strong, scary killer named Red Dragon, thinking himself to be the devil, Fiennes takes the cake there. He's so good as a villain, as we've always known him to be, and so he's able to portray that swap in personalities that they needed for this film. Noonan couldn't ever really do that very well. Past that, this film is paced much better, as Hannibal definitely seems much more important here than he ever was in Manhunter, and it was more or less a fantastic final performance from Hopkins in the role, even though it's technically a prequel. Can you tell that it's a prequel? Not really. I mean, Hopkins had aged in the last 11 years since Silence of the Lambs, and you can definitely tell, but his performance is just as good, so most of what you can tell as far as his aging goes, you forgive it. Now, it's not as much of a psychological thriller as Manhunter was, because when Will Graham is utilized the right way, you often have this inner battle between Graham trying to hold onto his own sanity versus getting into the mind of a serial killer, getting stuck there. And Hannibal's manipulation definitely never helps with that. So chemistry isn't right for a psychological thriller. The only version out there that works for chemistry between Will Graham and Hannibal specifically has been the TV show. That's why at the top of this review I said it completely depends on which version you personally like the most, because each variation has its own positives and its own negatives. I personally think that Anthony Hopkins is just so good in the role that the best version can only be Red Dragon, but I do understand if you disagree. With that being said, let's take a look at my final score, starting off with the unbiased, which is just technical mumbo-jumbo. In general, it's not quite as well done or iconic as Silence of the Lambs, but I would argue that it's a close second, as the visuals and the cinematography are great, the performances are strong, the mystery of the story is told in a way that I feel is much cleaner than that of Manhunter, and it's a good closing film for the man, Anthony Hopkins. This score is 86%. As for my personal bias score, I gotta say this film is made extremely well. It doesn't get a perfect 100% bias score like Silence of the Lambs did for me, but again, close second, because it is a lot of fun. The mystery is mysterious. There's a lot of fun shout-outs to Manhunter if you've seen it, and if you hadn't yet, no biggie. Personally for me, I give this 92%. When we combine the two scores together, we come to the final rating of 89%. 89 out of 100 possible stars, or an A- letter grade. Guys, let's hear your thoughts on Red Dragon in the comment section down below. As for YouTube, you guys know what to do. Hit that like, subscribe button, and bell to be notified when I come up with my next review. And until then, peace out.
Dave examines movies we just watch for fun. Davey is the expert. He is the #1 critic that I go to when I need a movie.